February 25th, 9:47 a.m. District Court, Defendant Lobby Number 2. This is the defendant's lobby, alright, but there's no defendant. I've been trying to reach Elena all morning. Where could she be? And where's Emma, for that matter? It almost seems as if something's been happening behind the scenes. Edgeworth, knowing you, you've already figured it out. Who the owner of this 7 ID card is. Well, I have a pretty strong hunch. Looks like I'm not the only one who's figured it out. You know, the only reason this trial didn't reach a verdict yesterday is because there was still room for doubt on this ID record. If that number does belong to whom you suspect, then no doubt will remain. After all, he hasn't been officially charged with anything. True. Not yet. In any event, once all doubt has been removed from that list, I can call for a ruling on the defendant 5 minutes after the trial starts. Elena will be found guilty. But she didn't do it. I figured you'd say as much. That's why I came here, to hear what you had to say. This is the first time he's ever done something like this. Elena's hiding something, and the only way we'll ever know the truth is to draw it out of her. The truth? Everything goes back to the SL9 incident. Don't be stupid, today's the last day of the trial. We don't have time to reminisce about the past. That depends on you. If she's found guilty, you'll lose your only chance to find out what really happened. I'll think about it. See you in court, Wright. This is it. If I'm ever going to find out what Chief Gant has on her, it's now. February 25th, 10 a.m. District Court, courtroom number 9. Court is now in session for the trial of Miss Lena Skye. The defense is ready, Your Honor. The prosecution is ready, Your Honor. Normally, this is when the prosecution puts forth its opening statement. But before that, the police chief has a proposal to make. Chief Gant. Morning, folks. How's everyone doing? Hey, Yaji. Been back to the pool yet? No, I've been drowning enough as it is in my own ward. Oh, that's a good one. I don't think I can top that. If you don't mind me asking, Chief, exactly what is this proposal of yours? Lena, that is to say the defendant, has asked me if she could just speak directly to the court. She wants to do what? Having heard what she intends to say, I feel she should be granted a request. In the end, it should save everyone a lot of time and trouble. Can I move to block? Please block. What's this all about, defendant? I'd just like to make one simple request and I'll be finished. Well then, what's your request? Your Honor, I'd like you to put an immediate end to this trial. Huh? I confess to all charges against me. On February 21st of this year, I murdered Detective Bruce Goodman in the underground parking lot of the prosecutor's office. No, Lena. You can't. Your Honor, the defendant's claim does not change the defense's plea. In that case, Mr. Wright, I no longer require your services. But Lena. Your Honor, I hereby forfeit my right to an attorney. The prosecution may lack direct evidence against me, but it has significantly proven its case through testimony and circumstantial evidence. I would like you to render your verdict now, if you please. Well, the defendant certainly has the right to self-representation. Her request is legally valid, although this is an unprecedented situation. Indeed, it appears there's no further need to continue this trial. Objection, she is under duress and thus not thinking clearly. This is not her true intentions. Even if Mr. Wright may feel otherwise. This can't be happening. It appears the time for the verdict has arrived. The court finds the defendant. Thank you for the objection. One moment, Your Honor. Mr. Edgeworth, The prosecution has not yet proven the defendant guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Any ruling at this stage would certainly be premature. Come now, Worthy. I understand this is a difficult time for you. But why don't you just be a good little boy and keep your mouth shut? I don't think I care for your tone, Chief Gant. What? Creating another fabrication to cover up your past mistakes. Sorry, but I'm no longer the naive little boy you would have me to be. Good. With this sudden confession from the defendant, it's obvious to me some kind of deal was struck behind the scenes. Some kind of deal. Not everyone operates as you do, Worthy. I thought so. Your Honor, the prosecution would like to change its first witness. To whom? As its first witness, the prosecution would like to call Miss Emma Skye. I request the court hears her testimony. Mr. Edgeworth, I am exercising my right to self-representation. I don't think we need to continue. I don't care what you think, Miss Skye. The exposure of truth sometimes results in tragedy. However, no matter how tragic the truth may be, it would be an even greater tragedy to avert one's eyes from it. Very well, the court shall grant the prosecution's request. That's okay with you, right, Chief Gant? Worthy. You'll live to regret this, mark my words. Miss Emma Skye, please take the stand. Looks like Edgeworth has decided to take the horse by the reins. Now then, witness, please state your name and occupation. My name is Emma Skye. My occupation, I'm Lena's little sister, and I want to be a scientific investigator. 2 years ago, you encountered the serial killer Joe Dark of the Joe Dark killings. Is this correct? Yes. I'm trying my hardest to forget about that, though. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to recall those events one more time. Mr. Edgeworth, please remember this trial concerns the murder of Detective Goodman. Is an incident that was resolved 2 years ago really all that relevant? Yes, it most certainly is. Well, okay then. You sure gave in fast. Now, please testify about what happened to you 2 years ago. The trip to yesteryear has finally begun. It's bound to lead to the truth behind this trial. 2 years ago. I was waiting in my sister's office that day. A man came running in and took me hostage. Neil Marshall rescued me. I'd never forget what I saw that instant. The man raised his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest. It's a good thing you weren't harmed. I passed out. I don't remember much. That's understandable. However, please tell me, Mr. Edgeworth, what does this testimony have to do with Detective Goodman's murder? That will soon become apparent, Your Honor. You've got to admire him for his courage, considering he has no evidence. Very well, the defense may begin his cross-examination, even though technically I'm not the defense anymore. But whatever. Okay, let's press on all these. 2 years ago, the defendant was a detective at the police department, correct? Yes, she was a second-in-command under Chief Detective Gant. My sister, she was the best detective ever. Yes, I remember. Chief Detective Gant and Miss Skye used to be quite the pair. I believe they shared the same office. That's right. I'd always sit at my sister's desk and dream about playing that organ. I wanted to play it that day, too. The police department and the prosecutor's office held a ceremony that day. Lena promised to take me to dinner after she finished her work. Man came running in and took me hostage. A man? Yes, Joe Dark. He was, a serial killer. Joe Dark was brought in for questioning on the day of the ceremony. We were desperate to get anything on him that would lead to his arrest. When he saw his chance, he fled the room, right? Upon fleeing the room, Joe Dark proceeded to take the elevator. He must have been in a panic because the elevator was going up. He then ran into Sky and Gant's office. There was a lot of noise coming from outside, so I opened up the door to have a look. That's when I saw him. Neil Marshall rescued him. What was the prosecutor doing there? That day, there were two people present during Dark's questioning. Detective Damon Gant and Prosecutor Neil Marshall. Gant was there too. Neil Marshall had just received the King of Prosecutors Award. Young and dedicated, he went straight to the questioning room right after the ceremony. I assume that would also be why he was the first to run after Dark. When Dark grabbed me, I thought I was as good as dead. And that's when Prosecutor Marshall came running in. I don't clearly remember what happened then, but I'll never forget what I saw. You said you didn't see it, though. Can you tell us about that? Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark. Just then, the lights went out. The lights went out? It was just about this time of the year. There was a terrible storm going on and lightning struck nearby. So the electricity went out. Wait a minute. If it was pitch black in that room, you shouldn't have been able to see anything, right? Right, but just then lightning flashed again outside. That sudden flash left an unforgettable image of the scene in my mind. I see. I told the detective about what I saw then. The detective? Yes, Detective Goodman. He was in charge of the case. Detective Bruce Goodman, the victim. Hear more. So you spoke with Goodman about this 2 years ago? Yes, that's what's so scary about this trial. And you told Goodman about what you saw. Yes, but at that time the words just wouldn't come out. That's why I drew a picture. Picture? Yes, I think she mentioned that before. Well, Mr. Wright, have you heard enough? Ask about the picture. This picture the witness drew. I believe it has a very important meaning. But the list of evidence I was given 2 years ago didn't contain a picture. Witness, would you mind if we added this statement to your testimony? Yes, Your Honor. I drew a picture of that once before, but it seems to have been lost. Well, actually. Mr. Edgeworth. This little girl put all her heart into drawing that picture. And yet you still insist on denying its existence? Hey, I'm not the bad guy. All I'm saying is that as the prosecutor for that case, I wasn't handed such a picture. That may very well be, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Behold. This is the evidence list of the SL9 incident. Please turn it over, Your Honor. Turn it over? Turn it... Ah! What's this? Yes, that doesn't look much like a knife if you ask me. Well, yeah, what is that? Hey, that's it. That's the picture I drew. Indeed. Two men appear to be wrestling here. What's the meaning of this? What are you doing with that list? Me? Only the prosecutor in charge should have access to that list. Huh? These lists, they're different from each other. What? It would appear, Mr. Edgeworth, that the evidence list that you were handed 2 years ago was incomplete. These two lists fit together to form one. You can see the markings here where they're torn apart from each other. So as you see, Mr. Edgeworth, it's quite obvious what happened 2 years ago. Only half of the evidence in the case ever reached you. What? What? Order. Who would have thought that the picture would have been drawn on the back of the list? That was handed Detective Goodman in the questioning room. Wait a minute. If this list was torn in half, then that means... Your Honor. Are you alright, Mr. Wright? Your eyes are bulging from your head. If the evidence list was torn in half, then there might be more of the drawing on the back of Mr. Edgeworth's list. Yeah, that's quite conceivable, Mr. Edward. It's possible. Let's see. Is something wrong? Do you even have to ask? Good lord, buddy. Sorry, Your Honor. There is something drawn on the back of my list. This is that thing. This giant fucking cup. That's that thing. That thing that was dancing in the evidence room. Apparently the head of criminal affairs used this for his blueprint. I guess he was out of scrap paper. Never mind. Evidence list has been updated. Fucking Christ. 1 second. Very well, witness. Let me check this. What the fuck? No, this thing has to be this oddly shaped jar. Because if you look at it from the top, it has those legs with a little thing at that end. Well, part of it's broken off, but yeah, it has to be that thing. So, like, what? Do you, like, string it up? Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so yeah, he had this thing hanging up there, and it ended up falling on Joe Dark. And probably killing Marshall. I don't know. Something happened. Something happened. Will you please testify about the picture you drew 2 years ago? Huh? Oh, yes, sir, Your Honor. What's wrong with Emma? She seemed to be thinking about something when she saw that picture. Emma's picture. This is the picture I drew 2 years ago. The flash of lightning was so bright all I could see were the shadows. After that I must have fainted. This picture shows exactly what I saw that instant. To think a flash of lightning could burn such an image in your mind. Thanks to that, though, she was able to show us exactly what she saw. She said she only saw shadows, though. That doesn't mean she saw an actual person. Well, I don't see any contradictions here. This clearly shows Joe Dark about to murder Prosecutor Neil Marshall. The defense may begin its cross-examination. She might not have been able to tell it's Joe Dark, though. Can't ID him. Picture I drew 2 years ago. Press. Did you draw this picture right after the incident? I think I drew it 2 or 3 days later. At first, I was in such a state of shock that I couldn't do anything. During that time, the detective team was reorganized. Detective Goodman was placed in charge, under the direction of Damon Gann and Lena Skye. 2 or 3 days later, the memory should still have been fresh in her mind. Excuse me, witness. But can you please tell us why this picture is painted all black? The flash of lightning was so bright all I could see were shadows. There you go. So at the time you didn't even know it was Mr. Marshall who'd come to your rescue? No, I couldn't see him clearly. The lightning was so bright and I was knocked to the floor. You were knocked to the floor? Dark had a tight grip on me when Mr. Marshall jumped on him. I was knocked away. I turned around. And that's when the lightning flashed. Poor Emma, I'm just glad she wasn't hurt. But what happened after the lightning flashed? If that must have been. You mean you didn't see the actual murder take place? No, I'm sorry. The flash of lightning only drove off the darkness for a split second. Not only that, but the trauma of the situation understandably caused the witness to faint. Do you really need to torture this girl any further? What? Hey, I'm not the bad guy here. Anyway, this picture. This picture shows exactly what I saw in that instant. Sorry for asking you so many times, but are you sure you drew exactly what you saw? Of course, this is the exact scene. It wasn't influenced in any way from your talks with the detectives. Are you insinuating we somehow manipulated her memory, Mr. Wright? No, of course not. I better watch out or he might find some way to cut my salary. I drew this picture before I heard anything from the detectives, so I don't think anyone's story would have influenced me. Mr. Wright, is there something that's bothering you about this picture? Huh? Oh, well. It's strange. She claims that's exactly the scene that was imprinted in her mind. Yet, there's clearly a contradiction here. This is the picture I drew 2 years ago. Oh. Well, what about this other part? Okay, oh, wait, did she draw both? No, fuck. I don't see anything contradictory. Fuck. Oops. Let me try the other one. Does this work now? No. Shit. There we go. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this picture the witness drew contains a blatant contradiction. What? I still remember just like it was yesterday. Mr. Wright, perhaps it would be faster if you simply pointed out this contradiction for us. What part of this picture contradicts the autopsy report? Well, I mean, that's not the knife that was used. Obviously. The contradiction, of course, lies here. Take a look at the knife the man's holding. If you look closely, you can see its tip is broken. In fact, you don't even have to look closely to see that. But Mr. Wright, look at the evidence. See the murder weapon? Its tip is broken too. If I recall, the tip of the knife was found broken off in the victim's body. It was so conclusive piece of evidence that proved Joe Dark was the murderer. I'm afraid it's not so simple, Emma. It's wrong order. Where could you possibly see a problem? It's obvious, really. The victim suffered a single stab wound in the back. If the victim was only stabbed once, then the murder weapon should not yet be broken. Ah! What's the meaning of this? Perhaps the knife was broken beforehand. No, it was clearly that it was broken off inside of him. The tip of the knife was found inside the victim's body. If it was broken beforehand, it couldn't possibly wind up there. That's right, but what does this mean? The tip of the knife was undeniably discovered within the victim's body. The only possible explanation is the witness' memory is mistaken. That's why I asked her so many times if she was sure she remembered correctly. I believe you were annoyed at the time, but she was sure she remembered correctly. But there's no other way to explain this inconsistency. Not so fast, Mr. Edgeworth. There's another explanation. It's that she saw that, but it wasn't the murder.